Hello and welcome to Azur Lane Meta. If after this video you want to help support the channel, please check out my affiliate store at kit.co/Azur Lane Meta. Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we have another data mine video for the Microlayer Medley rerun event. This is the event that got rerun for the English anniversary. I'm super excited to see what these two new ships have in store. Also, because I missed the anniversary event due to a power outage, I didn't have the opportunity to share with you my thoughts on Ark Royal post retrofit. Since a ton of you asked about it in my last live stream, I will share it in this video. It's technically not on data mine since we've had her for a week, so I will put it at the end of this video for those of you who are interested in my thoughts on Ark Royal retrofit. And then everyone interested in just the data mine can leave and kill my retention rate. Anyway, before we get into the new ships, let's talk about the rest of these patch notes. Mostly this update is bringing the rerun Microlayer Medley. Gonna bring back all of the old ships, as well as all of their skins, as well as the event exclusive furniture, and hopefully not the extended maintenance too. Other than this event, the only other updates really are new voice lines for Abercrombie, Hood, Unicorn, and the two new ships. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what new players can do to optimize this event. Feel free to use the timestamps if you don't care about this. First things first, let's talk about target ships. This event is full of mid-tier ships that have a lot of utility for beginning and mid-level players. Intrepid is a good carrier, Reno is unique for buffing carriers, and Casablanca is a cross-fleet buff that is very nice. However, all of these ships not really best in class, and there are better options out there since this event is kind of old. Don't get me wrong though, pick them up if you can. That being said, the two target ships that I would reach for if I didn't already have them would be Bremerton, the ship no one can understand when I say her name, and Cooper. Bremerton should be pretty easy to understand. She is a firestorm of damage that you can use when a hard mode requires you to use a heavy cruiser. There's one thing that the Americans are good at in this game, it's having solid heavy cruisers. She's a map drop from the boss at B3, D3, and SP. She's also available in the shop. This on top of already being in the gacha too. She should be easy to pick up. Now, Cooper being my second choice is a little bit based on speculation. Cooper, right now in the game as it stands, isn't that good. That is because she is an anti-submarine warfare specialist, and ASW does jack right now. However, we are getting World 14 before the end of the year. There is some speculation that it might have submarines in a higher capacity to make ASW not completely useless in the game, and if that is the case, you might want to have Cooper on your roster as an option. She is event exclusive, and so is her item, so we do want to make sure that we get her just so we're not left in the dust if that does happen. I'm not saying that will happen, I'm just saying you probably don't want to not have her if that does happen. Marblehead and Bluegill are collection only. So where do you want to do your grinding? This event is a little bit different than other events in the fact that I would recommend that you do your repetitious grind on D2 instead of D3 normally. Now, D3 does drop Bremerton, and if you don't have her yet, you do want to make sure you get her. However, she is available in the shop guaranteed, so I'm not too worried about you picking her up. On top of that, the difference between D2 and D3 in points doesn't make that much of a difference since there's not too much in this shop that is going to be important. We can talk about the shop in just a second. So in D2, you actually drop Ark Royal, who is very good, and I'll talk about at the end of this video, as well as Casablanca. And Casablanca is a great ship for new players because she has a very low investment cost to get a cross-fleet buff. Independence, who has out power crept her, requires her to be retrofit before she gets that skill, and you may not, as a new player, have the ability to retrofit her right away. Casablanca has that cross-fleet buff that you can start using right away on day one. So she's a good pickup for newer players. In terms of the drops, D3 drops a submarine torpedo. Subs are not good for new players. They're just not worth the investment at that low level. They will be better when you actually level up, but they are a long-term investment. On top of that, those submarine torpedoes are outclassed by two other submarine torpedoes that are available through the weekly submarine missions. So why invest in a submarine torpedo that's not even going to be the best, and you're not going to need to use it until the very end of the game? Conversely, in D2, we actually drop the purple dive bomber, the Helldiver. Now, this is no longer longer the best dive bomber anymore because of the new UR dive bomber, but it might be likely that it will take a new player a year before they even get their hands on one. So this purple dive bomber is a low investment, very high yield damage dive bomber that new players should be able to pick up and put one on pretty much all of their carriers. So you want to grind and make a bunch of them. You can also upgrade them to gold if once you get to Operation Siren at level 60, so they do have some potential to get better. So I think that the drops are better here in D2, and the decrease in the amount of event points is not going to be significant since the shop is not that important. In the shop, we have Casablanca and Bremerton. If you're grinding D2, you should very easily get Casablanca, so you don't have to buy that. Bremerton, you might have to buy, but 8,000 points isn't a lot, and if you're rerunning this event, you already have her. As with every event, you do need to get your PR and DR prints. That's going to be 25,000 points. And outside of that, the only two things that we really need are the 2 event exclusive items. We have the TBM Avenger. This has been outclassed by the new Wyvern, but most new players aren't even ready for Opsai yet, let alone waiting the 3 months to even get a Wyvern. And this torpedo bomber does do good damage against battleships, something important as you're grinding through the main story. It is slow, and it's not best in slot, but it is cheap and a gold torp bomber that you can use effectively as a newer player. The Catalina is only going to be used on Cooper. However, Cooper is like the best anti-submarine warfare ship in the game, and the 2 items that she's going to want are the Hedgehog and the Catalina. The Hedgehog is going to be gotten through your regular missions, but the Catalina can only be gotten in this event, and I don't know if it's coming back. The fact that they had to rerun this event before they announced World 14, likely in the coming months, tells me that maybe you're going to want to have Cooper available for World 14. Once again, speculation, but putting this on Cooper is optimal. So anyway, Bremerton and Cooper would be the 2 target ships at number 1. Casablanca, probably the 3rd most important, followed by Reno at 4 and Intrepid at 5. Marblehead and Bluegill round out the bottom 2. However, this doesn't include the 2 new rerun ships, which I will be getting into right now. These obviously are what I'm going for, as I have all the ships from the first run of this event. We shall see if they're any good. Fingers crossed. So we're going to start off with the Elite Narwhal class submarine, USS Nautilus. Stat-wise, she has a lot of health for a submarine, but really only 3 stats typically matter for a submarine: torpedoes, reload, and accuracy. You might need a minimum level of oxygen, but almost all leveled subs meet that minimum level. In terms of those 3 stats, she's worse than all the SRs. Her torpedo stat is even under 500. Oof. When we move down to efficiencies, they're even worse than SRs, so as expected, the Elite submarine is worse than the SR submarine in stats alone. Let's see if the skills make up for it. Skill number 1, move forward when entering the battle, then surface and fire a barrage. Take 60% less damage while the barrage is firing, then submerge and move back to the original position and fire a second barrage. Okay, so maybe that big health pool is going to be needed because she's going to be surface. She's going to be above the water and able to take damage. Yes, she gets a 60% damage reduction that she takes, but she's basically like a destroyer level of health. She's got light armor and not a big health pool. Nor does she have good evasion, so she's actually worse than the destroyer. She has a chance of dying here. It does give us 2 barrages, one when entering the battle as well as the second one very quickly afterward. This doesn't include her EX barrage as well, so that's a lot of torpedoes coming out at the beginning, but ultimately I don't really like taking my submarine and putting her above the water to shoot. All right, let's move on to skill number 2. All right guys, me from the future, just to let you know, this is actually a second recording of this skill number 2. This skill was mistranslated the first time I read it off in such a way that it made it totally irrelevant to what I was talking about. So this is the second run of me recording this, and it should have the proper skill, which does make it much worse than I initially thought, and I had to change it. The damage taken by the enemy unit that caused damage to Nautilus, so this is like when she's at the beginning firing her barrage and above the water from skill number 1, that damage is increased by 8% for 3 seconds. If the enemy unit is a destroyer, it will additionally be slowed down by 20% of its speed for 5 seconds. This skill I thought was going to be amazing because it increases the damage of the enemy by 8%. This is 8% of all damage. It's not restricted to damage type. It's not restricted to just Nautilus like U-47. It's not restricted to just the main fleet like I-13. It covers everything, which I thought was going to be amazing. The slow is only restricted to destroyers, so that's kind of niche for specific bosses, but not particularly something that makes this skill good. But that 8% damage increase could have been really good. but it is focusing on having your Nautilus just take the heat. Because you have to have this Nautilus getting hit, it pretty much only is going to work when she's above the water for her skill number 1. We don't actually know how well she's going to be able to survive, but I don't think it's going to be very well, to be honest, given the stats here. And so if she's only able to keep it proc for like 3 seconds, that sucks. If she's able to survive a little bit longer, maybe you can get it to proc a few times. It shouldn't stack. It should just re-up. That's how I read it here. So maybe you'll get it to re-up once or twice and you can get like 6 or 9 seconds of that boost, which could be useful. But in the previous way this was worded, this made her a tier 0 ship, in which the new submarine meta was going to be Archerfish I-13 Nautilus. But under this new reading and the one that's actually going to be her, she is just another bad elite submarine. So I got all hyped for this ship for a little bit, and then the correction came through. Unfortunate, but we weren't expecting much from an elite submarine anyway. Okay, moving on to the SR Submarine class destroyer USS Ingraham. Stat-wise, she looks pretty similar to her sister Alan Sumner. She does have less firepower and health. She makes up for that with a little bit extra torpedo. The biggest difference I see between the two of them is the AA gun efficiency. Ingraham has 180%, while Sumner has 160%. This instantly puts Ingraham on the radar for me for her being an anti-air boat. Of course, her sister is the best anti-air destroyer in the game, and probably about the 5th or 6th best ship total. And so this ship has very good potential. Her sister does have a Ghost AA gun from a skill. We don't know if Ingraham has that yet, but at 180%, if she does, would probably put her right in the category of best AA destroyer in the game. So let's go into the skills. Skill number 1, gain a special equipment every 20 seconds in the battle. It procs an extra time at the 3-second mark. So it procs at 3 seconds, 20 seconds, 40 seconds, 60, etc. This is good for the beginning, like PvP, or just the beginning of a map when you're fighting it. It's for mob fleets and stuff like that. So let's see what these skills are. It gets the following effects. All of these effects trigger. It's not like it randomly chooses one like other skills worded like this work. All of them will trigger every time with guarantee. So that's pretty good. Let's look at part number 1 of this skill. Spawns 2 shields that block 10 shots, each lasting for 5 seconds. Also fire this special barrage. This barrage is an AP barrage. It's also shield piercing, so that's a nice barrage, and shields are pretty good for decreasing damage. Part number 2, the Vanguard ship with the lowest HP gains a buff that heals for 0.5 seconds of the max HP every 3 seconds for 10 seconds. There we are with that weird wording where we have 3 seconds for 10 seconds. I assume that means it triggers 3 times. 1.5% max HP is not a lot, but I can't really argue with getting a free heal and the Vanguard, so that's kind of nice. It does also target the most at-risk ship, so that's good. Part number 3, the entire fleet's anti-air is increased by 15% for 10 seconds. This is pretty big, actually. This is not just her anti-air, this is everybody's. Her anti-air is good, but if you're able to increase New Jersey's anti-air by 15%, that's great. This is really good for countering like airstrikes and stuff like that, and decreasing the aviation damage that you are taking. San Diego is one of the best used anti-air boats, not just because she has high anti-air, but because she buffs the entire fleet's anti-air, decreasing the aviation damage they all take. I really like this. 15% is pretty sizable too. This skill number 1 is pretty good off the bat, but this ship probably still needs a little bit more to put it into the meta, but I like where this is headed. We got a lot of benefit from this first skill. Skill number 2, self AA is increased by 50%. That's really big, and it's of the self torpedo stat. That's huge because her AA is only 230, but her torpedo stat is 378. So that's actually better because we're buffing our AA stat based on our torpedo stat. This allows us to actually use oxy torpedoes. They will give us 100 torpedo stat and thus 50 anti-air. This means that she can be a torpedo boat and an anti-air boat together. I really like that, and yeah, oxy torpedoes for the win here. Her self-burn damage is decreased by 15%. That's kind of nice since she is a low health destroyer. She gets self-regen, or she heals herself 1% every 15 seconds. So not only does she have a heal in the first skill, she has a heal in the second skill. So she's got a lot of heals. She's just got the potential to be one of the best AA destroyers. I am looking at this for the first time, so I don't particularly know the exact math here, but eyeballing it, she looks about the same as her sister because she doesn't have a ghost gun, but she is going to have a lot more anti-air as well as anti-air efficiencies. However, she's not going to have that ghost AA gun. I don't see it as a skill. Her third skill is just an all-out assault. It is a special all-out assault, and it does look more powerful than a typical one. It's unique, so that's cool, but it's not going to make the difference here. I think the really cool part is the fact that you can actually like go for an offensive build and still get the anti-air, but she is going to be pretty light on a lot of other things. Like I said, I think she's going to be right around her sister in terms of her anti-air effectiveness. However, when she procs her first skill at the 3-second mark, lasting for 10 seconds, she's going to actually probably be a little bit higher, so that probably could move her into the Reno territory of anti-air, moving her in the top 5 anti-air boats in the game. Definitely one of the best, if not the best, anti-air destroyer. The fact that she's a destroyer means she has anti-submarine warfare. That's pretty strong. This means if we do have World 14 that has anti-air and anti-submarine warfare necessary, because there's a lot of planes and a submarine boss or something like that, I don't know, this is speculation, but if that were the case, Ingram might be a top tier meta ship to bring there. Otherwise, right now, she looks very similar to her sister Sumner, and Sumner's not seeing too much play. I'm still going to have to pick her up just on the off chance World 14 is the way that I am suspecting it will be. Okay, overall, and I have to re-record this bit too because Nautilus ended up getting changed on her narrative because of the new skill translation. Nautilus is kind of a janky little ship where she's trying to take damage to get some extra buffs for your fleet. It's kind of neat if you wanted to use subs to finish something but not take the MVP. I don't think she'll see much play. Ingraham is going to be much better. She's very much like her sister Sumner. She's not like mind-breaking, but she could be very helpful depending on how World 14 looks. Otherwise, she's just another destroyer AA boat, which is kind of a weird classification. I do like her a little bit better in the way of Sumner, in the way that she can buff other people in the fleet, as well as the fact that you can spec into some offensive torpedoes and still get the benefit of the defensive anti-air. So I put her a little bit stronger than Sumner in my opinion. Overall, cool event. I'm going to try and pick up both ships. So now I'm going to talk about Ark Royal retrofit and my thoughts on her because I didn't get to her last week due to real life circumstances. Her retrofit's obviously going to give her more stats. That's really good. We see a good 35 stat increase in aviation. This is really important. And that reload buff is also pretty important. This actually puts her more on par in the damage dealing stats with Shinano, who's one of the best torpedo bomber ships there is. Now note, she also got torpedo bomber efficiency increases, 3% in each slot. She was already one of the best torpedo bombers in the game, and so adding 3% efficiency is always really nice. That dive bomber efficiency at 15% increase, very nice. So stat-wise, Ark Royal retrofit really just went into like Shinano tier of torpedo bomber. She also has a ton more luck and accuracy than Shinano, which is going to be really good for critting actually. So now we go with that. Let's go into the skills. The slow and the double damage stay the same, and those are really super busted. Ark Royal was already being used and probably better than Ark Royal meta with just those two skills. But we got a new retrofit skill. Every 20 seconds, launch a new special barrage with a special swordfish airstrike, and that barrage looks pretty good. It reduces the anti-air of enemies hit by it by 8% for 5 seconds, and increases the damage dealt by destroyers and Royal Navy Vanguard ships by 10% for 8 seconds. Kind of funny that this skill actually brings in the destroyer meme of her character. Also, the fact that she buffs Royal Navy Vanguard, that's good. 10% extra damage dealt is pretty good. Reducing anti-air is actually important because this launches at the 20-second mark, so you could queue your actual launch airstrike to come in right after it if you wanted. So if you're looking at it, you're looking at the special barrage that reduces the AA, and then you launch with double damage with an extra another barrage that reduces the speed, and they have all these torpedo bombers like the Ryusei or the German converging torpedoes, depending on how mobile your target is. You choose which one it is, but the point is she is going to be the torpedo bomber queen again. It was very interesting. Ark Royals had kind of a good year in the global server, picking up an O skin and an Ark Royal meta, but it is kind of interesting to see that regular Ark Royal retrofit just totally outclasses the Ark Royal meta. This is also kind of weird because she also now just kind of surpasses formidable as that freeze damage torpedo bomber. Really, she has definitely locked her slot in. Her and Shinano are part of the torpedo bomber aircraft fleet for any sort of heavy armor boss that dies to carriers. It's also strange because we just released Parseval, and she is kind of a torpedo bomber. I mean, not really. She uses like targeting rockets, and they're more for light and medium armor, but she had the best slow in the game, and a lot of people use Ark Royal for that slow, and we're thinking of, you know, farming Parseval and then using her as the new slow carrier. But now we have Ark Royal that is really, really good. So it's almost like Parsifal got crept right after she got released. They do technically do different things. Parsifal is going to be more for light armor, and Ark Royal is going to be more for heavy armor, but they are both carriers focused on targeting a single boss and slowing down the movement of that boss. Ark Royal, really good. If you don't have her, you must get her. Of course, she does drop from D2 in this new event, so you can totally get her pretty easy. And yeah, that's my video, guys. So thank you guys for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.